Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kevin Kirkpatrick. I'm the Manager of Partner Development here at Enable Technologies. And this webinar is a follow-up to a white paper we released about a month ago called The 7 Keys to MSP Success. What the white paper covered off are 7 characteristics or exercises that we've identified that our top performing managed service providers have completed or have integrated into their business. And the white paper goes into some depth. We're going to review each of those 7 items at a high level today on this webinar. Each of these topics, in theory, could justify a good hour or in some cases more of time on its own. So our objective today is not necessarily to thoroughly explore each and every one, but hopefully to give you some ideas or takeaways that you can bring back to your business to research and potentially integrate something new in the way you do business on a day-to-day basis. So the first exercise, or the first characteristic that we want to talk about is very much a strategic one, which is goal setting. This seems like a very simple thing, but it's critically important really to any business, not just to managed service providers. And what we're talking about here is taking an abstract concept, something that you want to accomplish. I want to sell more. I want to grow my business. I want more customers. We want to be, bigger, better, faster, and turning it into something that is a little bit more concrete. Something that we can structure a plan around and that we can use to really build out a strategy, a go-to-market strategy or a launch strategy. To accomplish this, as part of the blueprint process, we leverage what we call a SMART goal-setting methodology. What we mean by SMART is first that it's specific, as in that goal is clearly articulating what you want to accomplish. It's measurable. There's some sort of benchmark that we can use to determine whether or not we've accomplished this goal. It's achievable in that we have a high likelihood or a reasonable chance of succeeding and achieving this goal. It's relevant. It aligns to our larger corporate strategy. And it's timely. It's got a clear due date associated to it. So another example of this would be we want to convert 40 customers to our managed antivirus solution by the end of Q4. So if we dissect this a little bit, it's specific. We can get a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish from the goal. Very measurable. We will either by the time we hit the end, have 40 customers, have 45, have 35, have 20, and we can determine how successful we were accomplishing our objective. Definitely achievable, as in it's within the realm of possibility. It's not something that is completely out of reach. It relates to our managed services strategy because it's focused on selling a particular managed service, and we have a clear deadline at the end of Q4. Now, we don't want to stop there. The next step is to take this SMART goal and assign a set of supporting objectives to it. What are the sub-steps that we need to put in place in order to achieve that goal? Well, if I want to launch this, then I need to have my set of fly sheets done. I need to identify what customers I'm going to target with this particular program, and I need at some point to decide that I'm going to launch and start booking initial calls. Each of the sub-steps, again, very clear and has its own due date assigned to it. Thinking in this way is the type of thing that you can ingrain into your corporate culture and that you can start using not just for kind of top-level corporate strategy, but to start holding everyone to account. And every time we want to accomplish something, applying this kind of logic to it. You can be sure that if I were to send an email to my boss with this kind of information on it, that come June 31st, I'm going to get a call from him saying, hey, how are you doing with those fly sheets? On July 15th, he'll come by and say, how's that customer list coming? And July 20th, he'll say, do we have our first meeting yet? How are the calls going? You can't do that kind of follow-up, and you can't build that kind of accountability if you don't do the initial planning and goal-setting exercise to begin with. So the first kind of key to success here is to sit down and lay out all of the different goals that you have as it pertains to your managed services business and apply that SMART goal-setting methodology to each one. For each of those goals, determine what are the supporting objectives required to accomplish that goal. And then we can't just stop there. There needs to be a regular review and update of the entire plan, whether it's on a monthly, a quarterly, or more frequent basis, reviewing all of the different goals, determining where you are in terms of meeting or exceeding that goal, and adding new objectives, right? In business, we're always looking to grow. We're always looking to, to change and to, enter into new endeavors. So there's always going to be new goals, new objectives, new things that we need to capture. The next element here, the next key to success, is thoroughly understanding your target customer or your prospective customer. This is an important element because it helps give a managed service provider focus. The best MSPs that we deal with out there understand very clearly what type of customer, what the profile of a customer is that's most likely to sign on to their services. The ones that they have the most experience with, the ones whose business they understand with the most depth, and they're able to very clearly target those potential customers and structure their campaigns around them. When we talk about profiling, we mean more than just the technology they're likely to consume, right? We're not talking about do they have an Exchange server, do they have an SBS server, what type of workstations do they have. We mean things like what industry or vertical are they in, right? Size or revenue to give us a sense of the scale of that particular customer. Other attributes like do they have an internal IT person? Are they likely to be working with a provider today? Are there common pain points that your average customer will experience? But the most important one is the last one there. What are your common customers or ideal customers' critical business services? What do your customers actually do over the course of a day as opposed to the technology they're using to support those services? Common example that I always use is a law firm. A senior partner at a law firm, at the end of the day, doesn't care about his firewall. Doesn't care if it's an Untangle or a Cisco Pix or a WatchGuard or whatever. He doesn't care about his Exchange server. What he cares about is, can he communicate with his client so that he can complete his brief, file everything away in his case management system, send everything to billing, so he ultimately gets paid. Understanding our customers at that level is critical because those are their drivers. The reason that law firm is going to sign on to a managed services program is because they're critically dependent on their technology to deliver those services. So the better an MSP understands what their end customers' critical business services are, the better they understand their core business drivers, the more relevant they can make themselves to that end client and to that target customer profile. As part of the blueprint process, the consulting engagement that we work with our partners on, we go through what we call a customer segmentation exercise. And this, simply put, is profiling each and every existing customer that you have today to try and derive a target profile or multiple target profiles. We look at all sorts of different criteria. Again, do they have an IT person? What size of the customer? Average monthly spending. Where have we seen successes versus not? Industry or vertical, and then critical business services, opportunities, special pain points for each one. Once we've got all this data together, we'll sit down and try and work out trends. Are there common themes? Are there industries or verticals that we see particular success with selling certain types of programs? What common critical business services do we see across this group? And what does that tell us? What can we learn from our target profiles, and how can we structure our services accordingly? Partners that do this well and have a very clear, specific, and targeted focus on a certain profile of customer reap a number of benefits. They can deliver consistent messaging because they're communicating to similar businesses on a regular basis. Their marketing message, their sales message, and even the message coming from all of the support staff is consistent and relates to the business value that MSP delivers to that type of customer. As you support a singular target profile, you'll start to develop additional specialization and expertise, further entrenching yourself and educating yourself on their particular business problems. As you develop that set of knowledge, you'll start to develop a reputation. A reputation is an organization that is known for supporting that particular type of business, and you can entrench yourself in their community. Most verticals and most industries have a lot of interaction with each other, and they are constantly sharing ideas about what vendors and what support organizations really understand their particular needs. Ultimately, all of this is going to result in a sales process that you can make incredibly efficient because you understand the buying patterns of this particular type of customer. You understand how best to generate leads, how best to qualify them, and the types of services to position to them that are going to have a high likelihood of success of closing because we have all of this understanding leading into our sales cycle. Ultimately, all of this is going to lead to more profitable contracts because you're getting the type of customers that make sense for your MSP, and that's going to result in higher margin and more growth. So that leads naturally into our next key for success here, which is service offerings. And in order to understand service offerings, we need to kind of, again, take a further step back and look at the industry to see, to talk about the strategy that we've seen our key managed service providers delivering to their customers. So first, we'll go back to the Gartner maturity model. Traditionally, when we've talked about managed services, we've been focusing on getting as many proactive or managed contracts as we possibly can. Real pure play managed services contracts where we're delivering, acting as the IT department for an SMB and really outsourcing all of the different IT components to that MSP for, a single monthly charge. They're the most profitable, the highest margin, and the stickiest contracts we can get. What we've seen, though, is that the average MSP is successful at getting to a point where about 20% of their customers are on a proactive or a managed contract. And then the balance of their customers, the 80%, they continue to service in a break-fix fashion. Now, if we look at it from the other angle and look at the SMB market, it tells the same story, that we've still got about 87% of the overall SMB market consuming IT services in a break-fix fashion, with only a small percentage buying into these high-value proactive or managed solutions. So we need to step back further and say, okay, why is that the case? Well, let's go back and look at the profiles of customers that are more likely to consume break-fix versus sign on to a fully managed or proactive. Typically, the type of customer that is going to be a good fit for a fully managed or proactive type solution is what we call an IT as an investment type organization. They are generally critically dependent on their technology to perform day-to-day tasks. All of those critical business services that we talked about before depend on their underlying technology. So if there's an interruption or lack of optimization or an inability to use their technology, it means they're not going to be able to perform those critical business services, and it will interrupt their ability to service their clients, drive revenue, or whatever their core drivers are. Because they have this critical dependence and their business owners, the primaries, understand they have this critical dependence, they're more likely to be prepared to invest in the ongoing management of their technology to try and protect their access to their critical business systems. Now, if we contrast that against everyone else, right, that lower 80%, that either doesn't have that critical dependence on technology, their business systems are simply not that tied to their technology systems, or they're simply not aware of it. They haven't felt that pain. Things have never really gone wrong for them, so they don't really see it as a risk. So there's an awareness issue. Generally speaking, this profile of customer is not going to perceive their technology as an investment. They're going to perceive it purely as a cost, and they're going to be driven by cutting that cost as much as possible, and they're going to want to control the buying decisions every step of the way versus outsourcing it to someone else. Moving an organization from an IT as a cost into that IT as an investment group and selling them a proactive or a managed solution typically entails one of three things. A long and arduous sales campaign by that MSP where highly educated people, usually the owners or the executives, work with that small business to try and educate them on the criticality of their technology and hopefully get them to a point where they start to perceive it as an investment. Alternatively, there's a critical failure, server goes down, they don't have access for a day, they lose a customer, they lose revenue, and all of a sudden that pain is made real, and the light bulb goes off and they say, okay, I get it. They move into that IT as an investment column. Or there's some other type of compelling event. There's a project that we implement where all of a sudden they've got a big capital cost they're looking to protect. Maybe there's they get acquired, or there's a merger, or a change in ownership or executives that all of a sudden open up the discussion and change the dynamic. But either way, all of those different scenarios, essentially, as far as the MSP is concerned, are outside of your control from a timing perspective. So the question becomes, how do we structure our services so that we can drive recurring revenue, we can sell managed services to both of those groups, to the 20% that are intuitively going to understand the value of my managed services, and the 80% that aren't. And so that's where we get this idea of approaching them with two flavors, two different types of managed services. For the IT as a cost group, we have a set of a la carte services that are largely technology driven in delivery. They focus on a specific service. So rather than talking about outsourcing everything, we're talking about subscribing to a single individual service and letting the MSP take that on. Ultimately, it's delivering value by saying we're going to support that individual service, and we're going to do it at the same as or lower cost than if you were just to deal with it on a break fix or a software purchase. The a la carte items are presented as a menu of services that lets that IT as a cost buyer pick and choose based on their particular needs at that time. Contrast that against the managed or the proactive, and these are, again, the traditional, fully outsourced, fully managed, fixed fee type of contracts that are incredibly high value, that align the business goals with the MSP and that IT as an investment type organization, where the MSP really becomes a strategic partner with that SMB, where you're both working together to ensure that the SMB is getting good value out of their technology, that things are optimized, and the entire business and integrated technology is running optimally. So an example of some a la carte services, again, these are, I almost think of these as IT commodities, things that are broadly applicable and virtually any SMB is going to require. Managed antivirus, they all know they need to have an antivirus solution. It's just a matter of, do they buy software off a shelf, or do they subscribe to your managed antivirus solution? The benefit that you deliver via this type of solution over just software off a shelf is the fact that you've got a team of network engineers that are monitoring and managing the solution, keeping it up to date, ensuring that scans are being executed, and ensuring that that SMB is getting value for the service. And we can go in with a value proposition based on cost. We can do it for the same as or less than just buying software on the shelf. The same basic value proposition is going to be the same for all of the different a la carte services. Compare that to a proactive type of solution, where now what we're doing is, instead of having a set of individual a la carte services that you let that IT as a cost organization self-select, we're introducing a package, a grouped set of services that's clearly defined. Typically, it includes regular preventative maintenance, either automated through an automation platform like N-Central, or partially manually delivered by your technician on a regular scheduled basis. Advanced performance monitoring on all of their key devices, keeping things patched, updated, up and running, reporting back to that customer on a regular basis, on a monthly or quarterly basis, demonstrating the value that you've delivered over the previous period, as well as incorporating some of those other IT commodities, antivirus, anti-spam, backup. Under a proactive model, we're limiting it to monitoring, maintenance, and management, keeping that environment up and running better, faster, longer, and we're excluding things like remediation, on-site support, emergency support, and end-user support. If we move forward into a fully managed solution, now we extend the scope to be a true fixed fee type engagement, where we're still doing the preventative maintenance, performance monitoring, and all of the other tasks that fall under management and maintenance, but we're extending the scope to include end user support, remediation, emergency support, pretty much everything aside from projects, upgrades, and major changes to the environment. So the key thing to understand here is that we've got essentially two types of managed services programs that our best MSPs are going to market with. They're going to market with a proactive or a managed solution that focuses on holistic network management for our IT as an investment type organization. And they're going to market with a set of simple, easy to sell a la carte services that are designed to and geared towards that IT as a cost type organization that's not a good fit at this time for a fully managed or proactive type solution. From there, that leads nicely into pricing. Pricing is a hot topic, and it's a contentious one across managed service providers. And we have our take on it, which we'll run through today. But just from looking at the larger debate, for me, one of the most important things to take into consideration when you're looking at pricing out your managed service programs is ensuring that you've done your due diligence on the program development side first, that you understand exactly what it is you're selling to and delivering to your clients. You understand who your client is and what their particular needs are and how much value they're going to derive from the services that you're ultimately selling to them. Once you understand that, then you're ready to sit down and say, okay, how much reasonably should I charge for these types of services, and how should I come up with that price? Well, the best practice that we talk about and that our partners leverage is to use first a cost-up approach. We want to ensure that we're profitable, so we need to ensure that we're establishing our costs for delivery of our services. Costs are always going to consist of technician time, so labor required to deliver upon the services of each contract as we've defined it, management tools like Incentral, like your PSA system, and any other software purchases that are involved in delivery of that contract, any administration time or quote-unquote other elements that we need to factor, and then we add in our gross margin to get to the final price that defines what our contract is. Now, that's a kind of a simplistic explanation of it. If we had to divide out again the two types of sales approaches we're talking about here, our a la carte services generally are best priced on a simple, easy to consume per device level. And the reason is, again, we think of our audience, right? They're driven by maintaining their own control. They like consuming services on a break-fix fashion. They like being able to pick and choose, when and where they engage with the MSP. So being able to, on a clear line item, say, okay, here's what it is and here's how much it's going to cost, is going to make a lot of sense to them. So if we said, I'm going to sell you, or I'm going to present my managed antivirus solution, it costs $3 per device per month. Simple, easy, and aligns well with the type of service that we're selling to that end client. If we contrast that with a fully managed type of program, where we're not dealing with a narrow scope type of service like an a la carte service, which is largely going to be technology driven in delivery and scales easily on a per device basis. A fully managed program is supporting an organization's entire environment and all their end users. And in order for us to go in and effectively quote them, we need to do things like an assessment. Understand what's happening at this particular organization, understand what their unique needs are, and then to build a proposal and ultimately a quote based on their unique needs. Because of the amount of complexity that goes into that, and because of the variability that can exist even from the same type of customer from site to site, we need to price a managed solution on a per engagement basis rather than giving them a simple per device equation that they can use. However you come up with that price, ultimately we want to keep that calculation internal. So what we're presenting to the end client is a detailed proposal giving our business justification for all the services that we want to deliver, and a single price. Here's how much we're going to charge to manage your environment on a monthly basis. When we go through a pricing exercise as part of the blueprint process, we have a calculator that we work through to help us get from A to B. What we look at first is your fully burdened cost of labor. So for all of the technicians that are involved in delivery of this particular engagement, what's their hourly salary plus any other costs that are related to that particular resource. And then we also look at the bill rate or the current rate card for that MSP so that we can get a starting point for gross margin. We'll then look at things like effort on a per device basis. How much time do we need to deliver our preventative maintenance regimen? How much time do we need to forecast to remediate issues that might arise on that Exchange server, firewall, workstation, and other device profiles? We'll look at time that's not necessarily associated to a device. How much time do we need to do things like our quarterly network health review? How much time do we need for just kind of general end user support? And then we'll also look at our tools costs. How much in central cost do we need to apportion out to this client? Are there other tools that we need to embed within the contract? And then we roll all of this up to get a total monthly management price. And because we've used this cost up approach, we can also calculate what our expected gross margin is going to be for this particular contract. And more than anything else, understanding this is one of the most critical elements for success that we've seen within MSPs. Understanding exactly how profitable a particular contract is going to be and then measuring that on an ongoing basis. So going back and testing your assumptions on a regular basis to ensure that your contracts are paying the dividends that you expect them to. So that leads to our next item here, which is documented internal processes. So at this stage, we now know what we're selling to our clients. We've got a good profile. We've got our strategy. We've got a pricing methodology. Now let's talk about delivering services themselves. The best MSPs out there understand what their delivery model is. They've got consistent and uniform processes to deliver all of the different services that make up their programs and their SLAs. Each one is documented so it can be a repeatable process. So you've got different people performing the same task and performing it the same way. This is important because it protects your margin and keeps your contracts profitable. So if we look at a typical MSP and the types of activities that they're performing on a regular basis, they're assessing customers, right? Determining their fit for acceptance of a particular set of services, bringing them on board, performing all of the baselining activities required to support that particular organization, configuring their monitoring and management solutions, getting them secure, setting up your optimization and your automation on an ongoing basis, ensuring that backups are occurring, and then having a mechanism to report back to the customer. Each one of these, broad categories is going to have its own set of additional requirements and processes and activities that are required. So the idea behind having documented internal processes is not just to leave this to, the particular instincts or, knowledge of the technician who happens to be doing it at the time, right? Take the best ideas that you have and distill it into simple and easy process documents so you can standardize your service delivery model. Here at Enable, we launched something called our MSP Technical Runbook, and our objective here is to provide our partners with a set of processes that align with technology like N-Central so they can start standardizing their service delivery. So this is a set of best practices that our partners can download, implement, and start leveraging in their business today. So next, we want to talk about sales process, and how the best MSPs out there structure their sales team. And I guess the first, kind of main thing that we need to talk about here is any successful sales organization has someone or a department that is clearly responsible for sales. And it seems like a simple thing, but it's an element that a lot of IT providers or MSPs miss in the early days of their growth. You need to have a single person, someone who's ultimately going to be accountable for driving new sales and upselling and cross-selling into your customer base. From there, if you're looking at hiring on a salesperson, there are a number of different models for the role that salesperson will take on. We could have an inside salesperson who's focused on cold calling and booking appointments for someone else. An outside salesperson who is going out, finding new business, aggressively hunting for new accounts, and then managing the entire sales cycle from lead generation to close. Or we could have an account manager who is focused not only on hunting and finding new clients, but they're also growing an existing customer base and upselling and cross-selling within your existing customers. There's no right or wrong mix or model here. The key is to assign responsibility for sales to someone within the organization and ensure that you've got a model well worked out. That model should include a sales process that clearly identifies how you engage with new prospective customers and how you move them forward along your sales process to ultimately result in a closed contract. This is a typical solution sale process where we first start with, of course, lead generation, focusing on our target profile, educating them about our services, and then reaching out to them ultimately to book a meeting to go out and learn more about their organization. That is our qualification meeting where we're asking questions, uncovering need, trying to understand, if this organization is a good fit for our services. Are they a good fit for our a la carte services, or are they better suited for our fully managed or proactive? Presenting our appropriate services to that client and mapping it back to their particular business need. And then if we get agreement to move forward, coming out and doing our due diligence, what technical information do we need to gather in order to implement our services, and then ultimately making an official proposal, presenting a price, asking for the business, and then moving forward through to implementation. The best sales organizations on the planet understand exactly what their sales process is. They understand exactly what their objectives are for each step along the way, and they can measure and manage it in an ongoing fashion. Having a sales process lets you implement things like a pipeline, where you can start to track your success and the effectiveness of the different phases of your process. Getting this type of information is critical for a number of reasons. It lets you as management determine what's working and what's not. We can start to evaluate things like, okay, if I do 20 meetings and I deliver 10 proposals, but I only close one deal, right? What's wrong with my proposal process? Let's do some loss analysis and understand where exactly we went wrong with these accounts. If we don't have that process in the metrics, we can't make those kind of decisions. And then we can also use this for investment and growth. If we get to a point where we can say, okay, if I make 1,000 calls in a month, I'm going to get 6 deals. You can then say, okay, well, if I hire on 2 new salespeople that are going to focus on nothing but doing an additional 1,000 calls, then I can expect my deals per month to go from 6 to 12. Again, all predicated on having an efficient, scalable sales process in place to begin with. And the final element here is this idea of management review, right? So having a process in place and having the measurement in place is part of the equation. The other part of the equation is ensuring that we're working with our people to regularly review and vet our performance. So this takes the form of a weekly or monthly review with your salesperson. Even if that salesperson is you, forcing yourself to sit down and in a structured fashion, look at what activities you've performed over the last period. How many meetings have we booked? How many calls did we do? Are we hitting our activity targets? Are we getting enough activity? Are we getting enough phone time in order to justify our other targets? What's in our pipeline? Are there any key opportunities that we're working? Are there any deals that we have that are at risk that we need to get some additional attention on? How much revenue can we expect to close in the next month and the next quarter? And then ultimately, how are we performing? Are we hitting the sales targets that we've set out? Let's go back to our goals and objectives. How are we measuring or tracking against the goals that we set out in our initial strategy session? And finally, the last kind of key element for success that we want to talk about here is integrated technology. Ultimately, an MSP is a blend of people, process, and technology. And technology gives you the tools that you need to automate all of your processes, track and measure the activities that are being done, and ultimately monitor and manage your end clients. Of course, our core platform is called N-Central. We're on the verge of launching N-Central 9.0, which is very exciting for us because it's the introduction of what we call Automation Manager, which is going to open up a whole suite of new opportunities to automate all of the standard processes that managed service providers need to deliver services to their clients. What N-Central does is give our customers a single pane of glass they can use to manage all of their managed, proactive, a la carte, and even their break-fix customers. In addition to that, we've got a suite of supplementary products, some of which are integrated into N-Central, like our managed endpoint security solution, like our backup solution. So again, you have these IT pillars that are integrated into the single pane of glass so you can deliver them as a la carte services back to your customers, and standalone solutions like our vulnerability assessment tool called Audit Manager. Our objective here at Enable is to equip our partners with the right mix of products and services to be able to achieve what we call 100% IT coverage. Manage and drive recurring revenue from all of your customers, not just the 20% that are on your managed program. So those are the 7 keys to MSP success as we see it. We've gone through things at a fairly high level as part of this webinar. If you'd like more information, I invite everyone on the line to go to our website, to enable.com, and it's right on the main page. You can download the white paper, which has some more detail, and there's lots of content available on enable.com as well. If you're an existing Enable partner, you can absolutely talk to your partner development specialist about any of these topics as well, and they'd be more than happy to provide more insight. If you have any questions for me or for Enable as a whole and you'd like to discuss them offline, please feel free to email sales@enable.com. With that, I'm going to move into a quick Q&A session here. I'd like to play with the pricing tools, can we? So if you're an Enable partner, what I would suggest is that you reach out to your partner development specialist and ask about the pricing tool and work with them to get it as well. If you are not an Enable partner currently, then again reach out to sales@enable.com. and we will be happy to set up a meeting to discuss in more detail. Are all the resources you mentioned available within Enable University? Absolutely. All of the resources available are available on the NRC via the blueprint process or the digital binder. Great question here. What are some of the qualifications and characteristics that lead to a successful MSP person? A successful MSP salesperson. So the first answer to this question needs to be, we need to define that further, right? Are we talking about someone who's just doing cold calling? Are they selling the entire thing front to back? Successful characteristics, if they are hunting for new business, they need to be just that, a hunter. Someone who is driven and motivated by finding new business. They generally should be relatively articulate, not necessarily from a technology standpoint. They can't be a Luddite, but they don't need to be an expert in things like again, firewalls and Exchange and things like that. To me, one of the most important characteristics is that they're capable of asking intelligent, probing questions of someone like a CEO or a CFO, and then mapping that information back to present the value of your managed services. Being able to say, here's how our solution is going to solve the problem that you've presented to me. So problem solvers, intelligent thinkers, good, active listeners tend to be the best qualifications that we see. From there, kind of a follow-up question here is about sales compensation. How would you pay for pay an MSP salesperson? Again, it depends on the scope of their their responsibility. For someone who's purely focused on hunting, they're not, all they're doing is going out and finding new business. We want to incent them with a large lump sum when they, secure a new contract. So typical things that we see there is a percentage of the entire value of the contract, or things like, we'll give you the first month, of a contract, or half of the first month. Alternatively, we see situations where a salesperson is responsible not just for going out and finding new business, but they're also building a book of business where they're responsible for upselling and cross-selling, additional managed services, additional project work and hardware into a group of customers. And there it makes sense to incent them with a retention type, type metric where they're getting a percentage of the ongoing monthly payments. So that might look like 50% of the first monthly payment, and then 5% of all of the ongoing payments. So a great question here: how is Enable better than its competitors? Well, one of the major value adds that Enable offers, and this is very much what my role is all about here at Enable Technologies, is providing business support to our partners. All of the content that I've talked about as part of this webinar is really derived from things like our Blueprint for Success solution, where we work with our MSP partners to help them craft, take to market, and launch their managed services solutions. We've got a team of what we call partner development specialists that are available to work with all of our partners, and are driven ultimately by making our MSP partners successful. This, coupled with our award-winning remote management and automation platform, makes a pretty seamless choice for any managed service provider. So with that, that's all the questions that we have. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I appreciate your input, your questions, and your participation. If there's any follow-up questions you'd like to ask, again, you're welcome to reach out to me directly. Alternatively, you can email sales@enable.com. Thank you all, and happy sales.